Welcome to the PharmaSource podcast.
And a very warm welcome to another CDMO Live edition of the PharmaSource podcast. I'm delighted today, ahead of the roundtable at CDMO Live on AI in manufacturing, to be joined by Aizon, by Claus Abildgren, who's the Chief Revenue Officer, and by David O'Gara, who's Strategic Advisor to Aizon. Claus and David, a very warm welcome. Could you please give us a brief introduction to you and your roles, please, at Aizon?
Thank you, Chris. This is Claus Abildgren. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer at Aizon. Excited to partake in the roundtable coming up at CDMO Live. At Aizon, I'm responsible for the sales and marketing activities. Been coming up on 25 years in kind of technology inside manufacturing, most of which in kind of the life science manufacturing space. So excited to join the event in June.
Thank you very much indeed. And David?
Yeah, hi, Chris. David O'Gara. I'm Strategic Advisor to Aizon. I have 30 years experience in pharma, predominantly looking after the CMO manufacturing, commercial side of the CMO manufacturing for pharma, specifically Novartis.
Great. Maybe to Claus first. Could you give a short introduction to the business and to what Aizon does, and also just give us a bit of flavor about what makes this such an exciting area for pharma manufacturing and what makes Aizon unique?
Thank you, Chris. Happy to provide some color and context. I think there's a couple of questions in there, so I'll try to do the brief version for the podcast today. Ultimately, Aizon is a software solutions provider to kind of the CDMO landscape or the pharma life science industries. And specifically, we aim to bring kind of the now available capabilities of modern computing into kind of the challenging space of complicated manufacturing processes. So ultimately, it is how do you develop a better understanding of what drives variation in your manufacturing processes such that you can achieve several different outcomes or improvements. But ultimately, it's getting more out of the available capacity to manufacture. It's avoiding adverse events, and with the ability of modern technology, and specifically artificial intelligence, it's the ability to anticipate in advance if you're at risk of occurring kind of adverse events. So software solutions to drive predictive capabilities into the manufacturing domain of life sciences, and specifically we are squarely focused at CDMOs who obviously run a business around the manufacturing drug products effectively.
Tell us a bit about how 2024 has been so far. We're just over a third of the way through the year. This is obviously a very fast-moving market segment. How's the year been so far?
There's a lot of exciting things happening, specifically in kind of the CDMO landscape, but also more broadly as an industry, and not at least with technology. We are all now more familiar with kind of new AI techniques such as generative AI. So it's kind of the what we've been at it for 10 years almost. So it's not necessarily new to us, but we're now seeing a lot of more interactions around, hey, how do we take advantage of the technology that's evolving so very rapidly? So for us, it's very busy times. Also, we secured funding late last year. We're now back into active growth mode, and obviously looking to help evolve the industry and take that first next steps to higher level of manufacturing performance in kind of practical applications of how do you drive value with technology and with AI today, and not just kind of as a future aspiration, but turn around and make a practical impact on your operations today.
Okay, great. Can you give us a bit more about the type of ideal customers that you as a business would really like to be working with?
Absolutely. And I think any organization that makes kind of drug products or elements under kind of GMP conditions, so where you are faced with the tight regulations and the demands on the types of ways that you apply technology, where obviously quality is kind of table stakes, but even how you secure data integrity and audit trails, all the things that comes with deploying technology into an environment where, again, the strictest requirements are in place. So for us, ultimately, it's the the ability to design for purpose, design for industry, and to meet the industry where they are today. So an ideal customer for us is, again, a manufacturer that operates under GMP regulations. And again, when you operate even a network of sites and multiple facilities, and you are constantly trying to advance the agenda, many are still on paper batch records. So how do you progress a digital agenda in practical terms? So not kind of boiling the ocean, but taking the first best step to accelerate that digital journey for increased levels of performance and ultimately kind of competitiveness in the industry.
Okay, great. Thank you. Taking on this question and theme around ideal customers, let's look a little bit more at the pharma market as a whole. Are there certain scenarios or eventualities, maybe in terms of molecule type or manufacturing area or data availability, etc., where AI has proven most useful to date?
Yeah, maybe just a brief introduction, if I may.
Of course, please.
Yeah, I was more than 30 years in the pharma manufacturing area with Novartis, basically looking after CMOs in the small molecule part of the business. What I've seen over a period is a certain transition from big pharma self-manufacturing towards the CMOs doing a huge amount of the heavy lifting on pharma manufacturing across all of the technologies. So to answer your question quite simply, all of these areas are completely open and there's massive opportunities applying these technologies. But to bring it back to areas where, if I bring it back on specific examples, and you take a CMO manufacturing an API in the typical batch format with a certain amount of automation, and you apply a digital solution to that. In other words, taking all the data that has been generated holistically in the plant in all areas and look at things like yield improvement, golden batches. These are the areas that really bring incredible value to CMOs and their sponsors, because in essence, they have the same goal. They want high quality on time at a reasonable cost or pricing. So using this technology in those areas, and specifically if you talk about something like yield, but there are so many examples that we have that we could probably go into in your roundtable in more detail, whether it's automated PQRs to take a lot of the grudge work out of for the quality organization and the production plant chemists in producing automated quality reports. Areas like this bring massive value. So to answer your question, and is there a specific area or manufacturing area? I can't think of an area where it actually can't be applied.
Yeah.
But there are obviously areas where you get a massive bang for your buck if you start deploying this technology now.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear as well that with such advanced technology and has huge capabilities in future, that actually the benefits that can be derived for CDMOs and for their sponsors are actually many of the benefits that those companies have been striving for long term, but it's another and different route towards those same benefits. So it's really very interesting to hear that.
Exactly. And that's, I spent much of my career struggling on those items as a sponsor, working with CMOs, and everybody wants to do the best, everybody wants to do the right thing, but how can we get to that point quicker and take the grudge out of it and really create value in terms of quality and cost? Especially if you're talking about areas like high value molecules, where you can get a yield improvement of a single digit 1% can be really orders of magnitude of value. So the NPV, the return on the investment is in these areas is staggering, really.
What challenges arise when integrating AI into a GMP compliant process?
It's a very important topic, and that can be as many dimensions or perspectives to it. But ultimately, I guess the what we advocate is, if you don't take the first step to try something new or take advantage of the technology that's now available, you're ultimately gonna kind of run the risk of being left behind. Kind of the kind of staying competitive, kind of the focus on improving. There are again now tools and techniques that can be taken in kind of without overcommitting, without sacrificing or running kind of undue risk. Practical steps to apply these new tools and techniques. Again, if you are entirely running on paper batch records today, there's a first step to take to go digital. If you have siloed systems, there's ways you can create a batch context, better analytical models that allows you to kind of just do a lot more and deeper analysis with a fraction of the time and effort of your technical teams. And even if you're relatively mature from a digital perspective, it can often be a constraint. Hey, I don't have that data science or analytical capabilities. Well, there's now tools and techniques that can do that heavy lifting for you, and you can arrive at these kind of better, deeper root cause analysis, the right first time kind of process optimization opportunities. Because you are kind of leaning on technology, AI can detect patterns that are just impossible for even the most trained process engineers to do with classical statistical analysis. So this is where, again, the pragmatic approach may get kind of focus in on these use cases of problem statements that Dave alluded to before. It's just, hey, it's not about just future-proofing something. It's around turning around and delivering value on your next run, on your next campaign. So you also set yourself up with those returns to fund the journey, to keep building on that digital roadmap that can improve your overall competitiveness and operation.
Thank you. David, would you add anything to what Claus has said?
Yeah, we're not changing data here. We're operating with the design within the design space of whatever we're making. We're operating with the validated ranges that have been submitted to the regulatory authorities. So there's nothing here that would be considered as that you're breaching any sort of compliance area, and you're using a software that has been validated and goes through its own validation. So, with that, you're just basically accessing data in a much slicker and effective way to come to a solution quicker that you may have come to through traditional techniques, but it's too late because the batch has started to go maybe AWOL, or your yield has decreased. So that's the advantage of it. I'm working closely with the as Aizon does, working closely with the agencies like the FDA to keep them informed as well as where the industry is going and how the technology is developing is really important, because inspectors now going into plants will see a change in the future of how they review batches. They won't look at paper batch records. They won't, things like that. So they also have to change in terms of their assessment and reviews of companies and facilities.
Yeah.
Just to add a perspective on that point, I think in terms of our business, Aizon, it was born, we only serve the kind of life science or CDMO space, which means from the origins, kind of the ability to arrive at call it core plus data integrity principles and fully validated applications. That was a foresight, not an afterthought. Meaning it's not something that if you ask an IT team, general IT or AI team, hey, maybe it can also work in pharma. It's designed for the industry, and that's where again the whole conversation around, hey, it's fit for purpose. It's built for the industry, for the complexities that come with making drug products at the required levels of quality and with the confidence that you can trust the outcome.
Yeah.
kind of still a journey ahead as an industry. All of us, we need to arrive at a point where we, again, like even with self-driving cars, right, where we trust that algorithms, the output of these predictive models, can be used also for automatic GMP decisions. We are not there today, but it's very well within reach from our experience.
Thank you. I'd like just to focus a bit on this theme around collaboration between CDMOs and sponsors and AI's kind of involvement with that. So I'm going to go to David first, and then Claus, please, I'd love to get your thoughts on this. When we're speaking with CDMO partners and CDMO buyers within the industry, this whole theme around collaboration and working together for the long term just comes through very, very frequently. So looking specifically at Aizon, at what you do, how can CDMOs and sponsors collaborate to create a win-win scenario with AI? So David, to you first, please.
Yeah, it's a great question. We have examples in the cooking. Let's put it in terms of how this collaboration can really gel together, especially if you look at it, if you take areas like tech transfer, where a process is transferred from a sponsor to a CDMO, the speed of that transfer. So I think, in practical terms, you would talk about 3-way CDAs, sharing of information up front, and having a collaborative approach in investing in a company to provide this resource to the CDMO. But in essence, it gives. Maybe I back it up a little bit and say that for that to work, you need to have a sponsor and a CDMO who have a trust level already at a reasonable level. So yeah. They are collaborating already. There isn't this sort of head in the sand when issues start happening, or in terms of information sharing. So there's a certain level of maturity there. In that situation, and I think that's the situation from most CMOs and their sponsors that have good relationships based on trust. The application here can be fantastic in terms of information sharing, whether it's on batch performance, whether it's on capacity utilization, whether it's on any of the quality attributes. Whether it's the automated quality reports that will be moving between the organization constantly, the levels of efficiency and improvement that can be brought using this technology is impressive. Yeah,
David, as you put it, it's about visibility and transparency, and ultimately becoming more data-driven as collaboration partners, where you now have tools and techniques that can allow you to consider a broader set of data sources, have a integrated kind of what we call contextual model. But then it's the confidence to know that I now have the kind of the science to demonstrate, hey, what are really ultimately the true root causes if we've experienced issues? What's the game plan? How do we instrument our process to be better off on the next campaign? So it's all in the spirit of ongoing improvement, and setting it up as a win-win is ultimately kind of where the technology can bring visibility and the data-driven mindset to all kind of have the same perspective on what drives good performance that will benefit all parties.
Thank you. Thanks, Claus. Aside from what we've covered so far, are there any other major trends in AI that you can see at the moment that you feel our pharma and biotech listeners should be aware of moving forward?
What's top of mind, I was at a kind of industry conference last week on a panel that was discussed at length. I think right now there's a lot of hype or interest around generative AI models, so large language models like ChatGPT and kind of the variations of those buckets. I think it's important to kind of remember, in the big scheme of things, it's very early days collectively of taking advantage of AI and the power it brings, but then also that the the ChatGPT models is only a very specific subset of how to apply AI to manufacturing and to process improvements. So I think there's a lot to be learned. There's certainly cool capabilities, but I think there's also some healthy skepticism around kind of specifically kind of this ability to create new content that raises a lot of questions in a regulated industry such as ours. So I think, yes, let's absolutely proceed with caution and healthy skepticism, but also just the reminder that kind of generative AI is just one specific kind of types of techniques within AI. A lot of what we drive value in our customers today on yield optimizations or avoiding deviations is not dependent on that set capabilities. It's just other forms of techniques that are being used within the broad domain of AI. So I think it's top of mind for many, but I think the risk is that we all think it's just about kind of ChatGPT-like tools, and we argue it's just one option to learn from and be interested in.
Thanks, Claus. That's great to understand. David, would you add anything on top?
Yeah, no, I agree. And the reason I put it over to Claus is the industry is conservative because of regulation generally in how it adapts and moves with new technology. So I'd say the AI that's available at the moment, what can be put in place is available, but the speed of the industry taking this up is probably going to be a conservative speed as well in some of the topics that we've mentioned, because flags will be put up in terms of the cost of implementation, a whole digital strategy.
Yeah.
Whereas it can be implemented in small portions in organizations in specific areas, and you get on that digital journey and grow your digital capabilities across the business.
Okay, that's great to understand. Claus, David, that's all we have time for today. Thank you so much for your overview of Aizon, your insight into what's happening in the market, obviously the importance of AI in manufacturing. We've certainly got a fascinating roundtable to look forward to on the 13th of June at CDMO Live, and we look forward to hearing more on the day. Thank you both very, very much for joining the PharmaSource podcast today.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you. We're excited for CDMO Live.
Join us at CDMO Live on June the 13th. All you need to do to register is head to pharmasource.global/CDMO Live. We look forward to seeing you there.